Hello and welcome to Pride and Prejudice. My name is Shauna Bestak. I'm the producing artistic director of Penguin Productions. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we are streaming live to you now. We had some technical difficulties. It's a brave new world, this world of streaming. But we're really excited to be attempting the live theater experience. And I'm just so proud of these wonderful young artists and the work that they've done with their fabulous director, Rachel Delmar, over the past couple of weeks to bring this story to life and to share it with you. So thanks so much for hanging in there with us, and welcome to Pride and Prejudice. Enjoy the show.
It is a truth, universally acknowledged.
Fact.
A
Single.
man
In possession of.
a good fortune
Is
need
A.
Wife.
My dear Mr. Bennet, have you heard? Netherfield Hall is to be occupied at last! I just saw Lady Lucas and she told me all about it. Well, don't you want to know who has taken it?
You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it.
Lady Lucas says it is taken by a Mr. Bingley, a single man of large fortune. What a fine thing for our girls.
How can it affect them?
Why, he could marry one of them, of course.
Is as intent in settling here.
You delight in vexing me. He will very likely fall in love with one of them. If you will only visit him.
I will send him a note to assure him of my hearty consent of his marrying of which he chooses other girls. I'll make sure to throw in a good one for Lizzie.
Lizzie is not a bit better than the rest. Not half so handsome as Jane.
Mama.
Nor so good-humored as Lydia.
Oh, Mama.
You be quiet, Kitty.
They are all silly and ignorant, except for Mary, the young lady of low learning.
A little learning is a dangerous thing.
Quite apt, Mary. I hope Mr. Bingley likes that, Lizzie.
We are not to know what Mr. Bingley likes, as we are not to visit. Do stop coughing so, Kitty, for heaven's sake!
I do not cough for my own amusement.
Still, coughing may annoy Mr. Bingley.
I am sick of Mr. Bingley!
I am sorry to hear that. If I would have known as early this morning, I certainly would not have called on him.
Oh, Mr. Bennet, if I can see but one of my girls settled with Mr. Bingley at Netherfield, and all of the others equally well married, I shall have nothing to wish for. When is Sir William's ball, Lizzie?
In 12 days.
Ooh, I wish it were now. Days pass.
And the Bennet family arrives at
Sir William's ball!
The sisters discover Mr. Bingley across the room.
He is accompanied by his sister,
Caroline, and another handsome gentleman.
Mr. Darcy.
The dancing begins.
Mr. Bingley is dancing with
Charlotte Lucas.
Mr. Darcy.
Caroline do not partake. As his dance with Charlotte ends,
Mr. Bingley sees
Jane.
for the first time,
And Jane sees him.
and they dance.
and laugh.
and dance.
Mr. Darcy,
And Caroline look in curiosity.
and concern.
Charlotte's parents watch with disappointment.
And Mrs. Bennet watches with loud enthusiasm.
Elizabeth smiles, watching her sister so happy.
The dance ends. Miss Bennet, I wonder if you would do me the honor of dancing with me again this evening.
I will, Mr. Bingley.
Oh, but not yet, I pray. If my brother's to dance with you twice in one evening, we must be friends first.
Come, Darcy, I hate to see you standing about in this stupid manner. You shall dance.
I shall not. Your sister is otherwise occupied, and it would be a punishment to dance with any of the other women here. As a matter of fact, you were dancing with the only handsome girl in the room.
Oh, she is the most beautiful creature I ever beheld. But there's one of her sisters, Elizabeth, who's very pretty.
She is tolerable. Not nearly handsome enough to tempt me.
Mr. Bingley, may I introduce... Oh, Elizabeth, I am so happy. Mr. Bingley is just what a young man ought to be. Good-humored, lively, and such good manners.
He is also handsome and rich, which a young man also ought to be if he possibly can.
Charlotte Lucas, you began the evening well. You were Mr. Bingley's first choice.
But he seemed to like his second better.
You mean Jane? Yes, it does seem as though he admires her. Indeed, I quite believe he does.
But poor Eliza, to be only just tolerable.
Mr. Darcy is such a disagreeable man that it would be a misfortune to be liked by him.
A misfortune many women might seek.
That is true, and I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine.
Pride is a very common failing, I believe. By all that I have ever read, I am convinced that human nature is particularly susceptible to it.
Bingley likes your sister, Eliza, but he may never do more than like her if she does not help him on.
Charlotte, she has known him only 5 minutes.
So much the better. It is better to know as little as possible about the defects of the person you are to marry.
Mr. Bingley, may I introduce my sister, Miss Elizabeth Bennet?
Miss Elizabeth, is not this ball delightful? I never saw one so beautiful.
But now that you are settled at Netherfield, Mr. Bingley, you have the opportunity to surpass it. You must give the next ball. Mr. Bingley, what does Mr. Darcy mean by listening to our conversation?
That is a question which Mr. Darcy alone can answer.
Did you not think, Mr. Darcy, that I expressed myself uncommonly well just now, teasing Mr. Bingley to give us another ball at Netherfield?
You expressed yourself with great energy, but dancing is a subject which always makes a lady energetic.
Mr. Darcy, I have always considered dancing to be one of the ornaments of civilized society.
It is also a vogue among the less polished societies of the world. Every fool can dance.
My dear Miss Bennet, what are you just standing about here for? Mr. Darcy, you could not refuse to take the floor with so beautiful a partner.
I have not the least intention of dancing. Good day, Mr. Darcy.
I can guess the subject of your reverie.
I imagine not.
You are considering how dreadful it would be to pass many evenings in such society. Fortunately, you have an alternative.
You are mistaken. I was meditating on the pleasure of which a pair of fine eyes in the face of a pretty woman can bestow.
Miss Elizabeth Bennet? I am all astonishment. What am I to wish you joy?
You jump from admiration to love to marriage in a moment. I knew you'd be wishing me joy.
You will have a charming mother-in-law indeed, an ornament to the Pemberley estate. Oh, brother, did not Miss Jane Bennet inform us that her uncle is an attorney?
Yes, a Mr. Gardner who lives near Cheapside.
Cheapside? That is capital.
If they had uncles enough to fill Cheapside, it would not make them one jot less agreeable.
But it must reduce their chances of marrying well.
Darcy, Caroline, you must excuse me. I'm promised to Miss Jane Bennet for this dance, as it is the last one of the evening.
Ball ends.
And they return home.
Another day.
I hope, my dear, you've ordered a good deal of dinner today, because I have reason to accept an addition to our family party.
It is Mr. Bingley, I am sure. Oh, Jane, you never dropped a word of this, you sly thing.
It is not Mr. Bingley, but a distant cousin I've never seen in my life.
Mr. Collins.
No.
Yes, Mr. Collins, who is against my will to inherit this house. Mr. Collins, when I am dead, may turn you out onto the road as soon as he pleases.
Oh, my dear, pray do not speak of that odious man. I do think it is the hardest thing in the world that your estate should be willed away from your own children.
The young, from home and hearth, sent forth into wilderness to wander. Wordsworth.
But my dear, listen to his letter.
My dear sir, I have been recently ordained as a clergyman and have been so fortunate as to be distinguished by the patronage of Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who has appointed me pastor of a parish in Kent, where I endeavor to demean myself with respect and to promote the blessings of peace. So I hope you will accept my proffered olive branch. I'm concerned at being the means of injuring your amiable daughters and assure you of my readiness to make one of them some amends.
Oh!
I cannot guess how he means to make one of us amends.
I imagine your mother finds it less difficult than you do, Jane.
There was something very pompous in his style. Can he be a sensible man, sir?
My dear Lizzie, I do not know. I have a reason to believe him to be quite the reverse. I'm impatient to see him.
I propose myself the satisfaction of waiting on you and your family today.
Welcome to our home, Mr. Collins, Mrs. Bennet, Elizabeth, Mary, Lydia, Catherine.
I have heard much of your daughter's beauty, but fame has fallen short of the truth. I am sure you will see them all well disposed of in marriage.
Else they will be destitute, things settled so oddly.
Mr. Collins, you seem very fortunate in your patronage to Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Lady Catherine! Oh, Mr. Bennet, never in my life have I witnessed such condescension as I've experienced with Lady Catherine. She has approved both the sermons I have preached before her.
Very good.
She made not the smallest objection to my leaving my parish to visit you, my relations.
Yes, yes, begone.
And she has advised me to marry as soon as I can.
Mr. Collins, you must marry. Let her be an active, useful person, able to make a small income go a good way.
Well, a man cannot choose better than one of my younger girls.
Mama,
Mama.
My eldest girl, I must just hint, is likely to be soon engaged.
Mama!
Well, Mr. Collins moves his gaze from Jane to Elizabeth.
Mr. Collins, I long to exhibit you to our neighborhood, and may I beg of you to accompany us to the ball tomorrow?
Papa.
If it is not beneath the dignity of a clergyman, it has been given by Mr. Bingley, who has invited all the ladies and gentlemen of our town, including the officers' regiment stationed here.
Ooh, officers!
I am so far from objecting that I take this opportunity of soliciting your hand, Miss Elizabeth, for the first dance.
they arrive at the ball.
Mr. Collins leads Elizabeth
Awkwardly.
Pompously.
through a
Wretched. Dance.
While Jane dances with
Mr. Bingley.
And Lydia dances with
Mr. Wickham, both laughing.
at Elizabeth.
All the while, Mr. Darcy dances with Caroline Bingley.
Oh, Lizzie, this is Mr. Wickham. He is an officer. Let him dance with you next and rescue you from that horrible Mr. Collins. I've got so many officers here to dance with.
It would be an honor, Miss Bennet.
I would be happy to dance with you, Mr. Wickham.
I see Mr. Darcy here.
Yes, he seems to be Mr. Bingley's particular friend. He's a man of very large property, I understand.
Yes, Pemberley is a noble estate, a clear 10,000 a year. I've been connected with this family since my infancy.
I'm surprised.
My father cared for Pemberley, the Darcy estate. Are you much acquainted with Mr. Darcy?
As much as I ever wish to be, I think him very disagreeable.
Alas, his faults go much deeper. Mr. Darcy's father was my godfather, and in his will, he said that I was to be appointed pastor at one of his parishes. But after the elder Mr. Darcy died, his son, the present Mr. Darcy, appointed someone else, and I was forced to join the army.
Good heavens! But how could Mr. Darcy disregard his father's will?
There was enough informality in the will as to give me no hope from the law. He said that I had forfeited all claim to the appointment by extravagance, carelessness, in short, anything he could devise. He was jealous of his father's affection for me, and he hates me.
This is quite shocking. To disinherit his father's godson? I wonder that he should not have been too proud to be dishonest.
It is strange.
They pass a portrait of Lady Catherine de Bourgh and her daughter.
Is that not a portrait of Lady Catherine de Bourgh?
It is. And that is her daughter, Miss de Bourgh.
But why should it hang here?
Lady Catherine de Bourgh is Mr. Darcy's aunt.
I am astonished. She is also the patroness of my cousin, Mr. Collins.
Her daughter will have a very large fortune, and the family has arranged that she and Mr. Darcy will marry and unite the two estates.
Really? Mr. Darcy is to marry his cousin? Poor Miss Bingley.
Oh, come now, Mr. Wickham. Did you come to a ball just to talk? Do you not want to ask me to dance again?
Ah, may I have the honor?
Dear Eliza, do come talk to me.
Oh, Charlotte, I have been speaking with the most agreeable man, saying the most disagreeable things about Mr. Darcy.
Has he any other recommendations?
He does indeed. He rescued me from my cousin, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins?
Just there, a clergyman who believes that because he is to inherit our home, that he also has a right to me as his wife. The moment Mr. Wickham released me from him was ecstasy.
Mrs. Bennet, may I have your hand in the next dance?
What? Yes.
Thank you.
What have I just said?
Eliza, do not allow your fancy for Wickham to lead you to be unpleasant to a man of 10 times his consequence.
Is not this a pleasant gavotte, Mr. Darcy?
Quite pleasant, yes.
It is your turn to say something now, Mr. Darcy. I talked about the dance, and you ought to make some kind of remark.
Whatever you wish me to say, I assure you will be said.
Very well. That reply will do for the present. Now we may be silent.
Do you talk by rule, then, while you are dancing?
If necessary. One must speak a little, you know. Perhaps you notice that I have been forming a new acquaintance.
Mr. Wickham is blessed with the ability to make friends easily. Whether or not he keeps them is another matter.
He has lost your friendship and will suffer for that all his life.
I do not forgive easily. My resentment, once created, is permanent.
And you never allow yourself to be blinded by prejudice.
I do not. May I ask to what these questions tend?
I am trying to make out a faithful portrait of your character.
I ask, Miss Bennet, that you not try to sketch my character at the moment. I do not think it would reflect well on either of us.
Lady Liz, I soon believe that Jane will be married to Mr. Bingley.
Mamma!
You speak with great animation.
Just think of the advantages of the match.
I beg you, Mother, lower your voice.
Lizzie, I am speaking to Lady Lucas. Lady Lucas, just think.
But Mr. Darcy can hear you.
Lizzie, what is Mr. Darcy to me? Pray that I should be afraid of him? Lady Lucas, just think. Jane's marrying Mr. Bingley would throw my younger daughters in the way of other rich young men.
For heaven's sake, madam, speak lower. Why offend Mr. Darcy? Mr. Bingley is his closest friend.
It isn't fair. Kitty and I haven't had the chance to dance with half of the officers in the room yet. And Mary says she's going to sing.
Mary? Sing? Oh, Papa.
You'll do extremely well, Mary. You have divided us for long enough.
Ah, my fair cousin, I have been seeking you, hoping to prevail upon you to stand up with me again.
No, I do not intend dancing anymore. Perhaps I could introduce you to any other young lady in the room?
No, I am perfectly indifferent to dancing. My only desire is to recommend myself to you, accompanying you in whatever activities you choose to undertake until this delightful evening is entirely completed. The next morning, Madame, may I solicit the honor of a private audience with your fair daughter Elizabeth sometime during the course of the morning?
Oh, yes, my dear, certainly. I am sure she will be very happy. I am sure she will have no objections.
Madam, do not go. I beg you will not go. Mr. Collins must excuse me. I'm going away myself.
No, nonsense, Lizzie. I desire you will stay where you are. Lizzie, I desire you will stay here and listen to Mr. Collins.
Believe me, my dear Elizabeth, that your modesty only adds to your perfections. I know that you have little money, and you are too poor to bring any dowry worth speaking of, but I shall never reproach you with that after we are married. Lady Catherine has advised me to...
You are too hasty, sir. You forget that I have made no answer. I am very sensible of the honor of your proposal, but I must decline.
I know that it is usual with young ladies to reject at first the man they secretly mean to accept. Therefore, I hope to bring you to the altar before long.
Sir, your hope is unfounded. I would not risk my happiness on the chance of being asked a second time.
With this encouragement, I shall expect a more favorable answer in the future.
Encouragement? How can I express my refusal in a way that will convince you that it is one?
My dear cousin, your family has little money. It is by no means certain that you will ever receive another offer of marriage. Therefore, I attribute your rejection in your desire to increase my love by suspense, as according to the practices of elegant females.
Sir, do not consider me now as an elegant female, but as a rational creature speaking the truth. My answer is no.
You are uniformly charming.
Mr. Collins, Lizzie shall be brought to reason. She is a headstrong, foolish girl.
If she is really headstrong and foolish, she would not make a very desirable wife.
Mr. Bennet, you come immediately! You must make Lizzie marry Mr. Collins! Lizzie declares that she will not have Mr. Collins. And Mr. Collins begins to say that he will not have Lizzie.
Then what am I to do? It seems to be a hopeless business.
Speak to Lizzie about it yourself. Tell her that you insist upon her marrying him.
Let her be called. She shall hear my opinion.
Lizzie!
Child, I understand that Mr. Collins has made you an offer of marriage, and this offer of marriage you have refused.
I have, sir.
Your mother insists upon you accepting it. Is it not so, Mrs. Bennet?
Yes, or I will never see her again.
An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. You may become a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do.
Father.
Is Eliza at home? I was walking to town and wondered.
Oh, Charlotte, I am glad you are come. There is such fun here. Lizzie has refused Mr. Collins. He is so vexed.
Is he?
Oh, Charlotte Lucas, you must show compassion. Lizzie is your special friend, after all. Convince her to accept Mr. Collins. For nobody is on my side. Nobody! I am cruelly abused.
Charlotte!
Aye, there she comes, looking as unconcerned as may be. But I tell you what, Miss Lizzie, I am sure I do not know who will maintain you when your father is dead. I will never speak to you again.
Mr. Collins, could I persuade you to accompany me to town?
I would be delighted.
Oh, Charlotte, thank you. He would else be stuck here with us. I am more obliged to you than I can express. What is it, Jane?
This is from Caroline Bingley. She and Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley have all left Netherfield for London.
And have no intention of returning.
Read this.
Charles wishes me to convey his regret that he couldn't bid farewell to any of his new acquaintances before we left.
Is it not clear that I am only one among his new acquaintances?
It is clear only that Caroline Bingley wishes you to believe so. Had Mr. Darcy shown half as much affection for her as Mr. Bingley has for you, she would have ordered her wedding gown.
Caroline could never willfully deceive anyone, and surely she could not influence her brother to such a great extent.
Perhaps not. But there is one who could. One so consumed by pride that he thinks no one good enough for himself or even his friends.
No. I must have mistaken his affection. At least the heir has hurt no one but myself.
You are too good, Jane, too trusting. The more I learn of the world, the less I am satisfied with it.
So Lizzie, your sister is crossed in love. I congratulate her. A girl likes to be crossed in love a little now and then. When is your turn to come? Let Wickham be your man. He's a pleasant fellow and will jilt to credibility.
Thank you, sir, but a less agreeable man would satisfy me. We must not all expect Jane's good fortune. Oh, Charlotte, where is Mr. Collins?
My dear Eliza, there is something I must tell you. Mr. Collins has made me a proposal of marriage.
You as well. Have you ever known such a conceited, pompous, silly, ridiculous... Ugh.
We are engaged.
Oh. I beg your pardon, Charlotte, and I wish you all imaginable happiness.
I am not romantic, you know. I never was. I ask only a comfortable home, and I am convinced that my chance of happiness with him is as fair as most people's.
Undoubtedly.
We will be settled in Kent. Will you come and see me early in the new year?
But you are always welcome here.
I am not likely to leave Kent for some time. Promise me you will come.
I cannot refuse you.
The Bennet family Christmas party
is underway.
Elizabeth
And Wickham
are under the mistletoe.
Oh, sister, I do not blame Jane, for Jane would have got Mr. Bingley if she could. But Lizzie, oh, sister, the Lucases have a daughter married before I have, and the Lucases will have this house.
I am sorry for Jane, but these things happen so often. A young man easily falls in love with a pretty girl, and when accident separates them, easily forgets her.
But we do not suffer by accident. The interference of his sister and his friend have separated Mr. Bingley from Jane.
Elizabeth turns.
To return to Mr. Wickham.
My dear niece, you are too sensible a girl to fall in love merely because you are warned against it. Mr. Wickham is poor.
Yes, because of Mr. Darcy, that odious man. As to my sensibilities, how can I promise to be wiser in love than so many of my fellow creatures?
Lizzie, I think a change of scene might do you good. I wonder if you would accompany your Uncle Gardiner and myself on holiday to the Lake Country.
My dear aunt, what delight! What felicity! Adieu to romance and disappointment. What are men to rocks and mountains? I do have one other visit to pay first. I have promised Charlotte Collins to visit her in Kent. Elizabeth arrives in Kent to visit Charlotte.
Eliza!
Charlotte! Mrs. Collins.
It is such a pleasure to see you, Eliza.
And me to see you, Charlotte.
Welcome, Miss Bennet, to our humble abode. I shall presently inquire the health of all your family and lead you to a tour of both house and garden. But before this, must come the news. We're spending the evening at the home of Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Indeed.
Yes, together with her nephew and her daughter. Her nephew, Mr. Darcy.
Later, at Lady Catherine's.
Are any of your younger sisters out in society, Miss Bennet?
Yes, ma'am. All.
All? What, all 5 out at once? Very odd. The younger ones out before the elder are married. Your younger sisters must be very young.
Lydia is not yet 16. Perhaps she is too young to be much in company. But it would be very hard upon younger sisters if they were denied their share of society.
You give your opinion very decidedly for so young a person. What is your age?
With 3 younger sisters grown up, your ladyship can hardly expect me to admit it.
What? You cannot be more than 20, I am sure. Therefore, you need not conceal your age.
I am not yet 21.
Lady Catherine moves towards her daughter.
And Elizabeth takes the opportunity to move away.
She finds herself face to face with Mr. Darcy.
How very suddenly you all left Netherfield last November, Mr. Darcy. I trust you left Mr. Bingley and his sister well in London?
Perfectly so. I thank you.
I understand that Mr. Bingley will not return to Netherfield.
Miss Bennet, in vain I have struggled. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. I must tell you how ardently I admire and love you. My admiration for you has overcome all reasonable objection to a union with a family so far below my own rank, reputation, and behavior. I trust that my declaration of intent will now be rewarded with your hand. In marriage.
Mr. Darcy, let me assure you, you are completely safe from any union with me and my inferior family.
Might I be informed about why I'm rejected with no attempt at civility?
I might as well inquire why you choose to disparage my family in your proposal.
So your pride was hurt by my honesty. Can you expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your relations?
Mr. Darcy, the manner of your declaration only spared me the concern which I might have felt in refusing you. Do you think that any consideration would tempt me to accept the man who divided Jane and Mr. Bingley from each other?
You accuse me of that.
I do. And your character has also been revealed in your treatment of Mr. Wickham.
You take an eager interest in that gentleman.
You defied your father's wishes and reduced him to poverty. You are the last man in the world whom I could ever marry.
You've said quite enough, madam. I'm sorry for having taken up so much of your time.
Elizabeth discovers her sisters.
Is not this nice? Is not this an agreeable surprise? We are come to see you home in the carriage, Lizzie.
They get in the carriage.
How nicely we are all crammed in. Have you had any flirting? I was in great hopes you would have got a husband before you came back.
Jane will be quite an old maid soon, I declare. She is almost 23.
Lord, how ashamed I should be of not being married before 23. Lord, how I should like to be married before any of you, and then I would chaperone you about to all the balls. Lydia nudges Kitty.
Lizzie, you must help us. The regiment has left Meryton.
Have they indeed?
They are going to Brighton by the sea.
And I do so want Papa to take us all there for the summer.
Mamma would like to go too. Only think what a miserable summer else we shall have. What is to become of us?
But Papa is so disagreeable.
A little sea bathing would be wonderful.
So you must speak to Papa because... Oh, I have got some news for you. It is about a certain person we all used to like.
Used to like?
It is about Wickham. He has been paying court to Mary King.
Oh, Lizzie, you are quite thrown over.
Well, you were a great fool for going away if you liked him. I am sure he does not like Mary King. Who could care about such a nasty little freckled thing?
He likes her £10,000. He never noticed her at all until her grandfather died and she became an heiress. And somehow she became much more beautiful.
Well, Wickham is gone to Meryton with the regiment, and Mary King is stuck here, like us. Do help convince Father to go. You could get him back.
£10,000. Well, even handsome young men must have something to live on.
Oh, you were not in love at all, were you, Lizzie?
I suppose not.
But still, won't you help us convince Papa to take us to Brighton?
Or at least me, as I am older.
Oh, here we are.
I'm glad you come back, Lizzie.
Oh, Mary, won't you help us convince Papa to take us to Brighton? Officers, dancing.
Far be it from me, dear sister, to deprecate such pleasures. They are doubtless congenial with the generality of female minds, but I confess they hold no charms for me. I infinitely prefer the company of a book.
See, there's a letter here for you. From Mr. Darcy?
Be not alarmed, madam. This letter contains no repetition of those sentiments that were so disgusting to you. 2 offenses you laid in my charge. The first was that I detached Mr. Bingley from your sister. The other, that I ruined Mr. Wickham. The first charge. It is true. I saw Mr. Bingley's partiality for Miss Bennet was beyond what I had ever witnessed in him.
This is a certain event. Only the date is to be decided.
Your sister I also watched, but from the serenity of her countenance, I remain convinced she was not especially attached to him. I was, with some difficulty, able to convince Mr. Bingley of your sister's indifference. I can conclude from your statement that I must have been in error, but it was an honest mistake. I opposed the engagement not because of any difference in rank or wealth between your family and Mr. Bingley's, but rather it was a total lack of propriety displayed by your mother and 3 younger sisters. Pardon me. It pains me to offend you, but you must see why I thought the connection unadvisable. Now, with all respect to Mr. Wickham, George Wickham's manners were always engaging, but his lack of principle could not escape my observation as we grew up together. My excellent father died about 5 years ago, In his will, recommended to me that should Mr. Wickham ever enter the church, I should appoint him pastor when the position became vacant. He also left him
£1,000.
Mr. Wickham went through the £1,000 in 6 months, then informed me.
I've resolved against going into the church and desire, in lieu of that appointment, more money. I wish to study law.
I knew that Mr. Wickham ought not to be a clergyman.
I resign all claim to assistance in the church.
He accepted in return?
£3,000.
Now free from all restraint, Mr. Wickham's life is a life of idleness and dissipation. For 3 years I heard little of him until the church position became vacant once more. Then he applied to me again to be appointed.
My circumstances are exceedingly bad. I found the law a most unprofitable study. I wish to be ordained as a clergyman.
You cannot blame me for refusing to comply with this entreaty. He has ever since been violent in his abuse of me. I will only add, may God bless you, Fitzwilliam Darcy.
Oh, okay. An invitation to Brighton for me.
But what about me?
Oh, congratulate me, Mother.
I do!
I cannot see why I should not be invited. I am 2 years older.
May I go, Papa? Please, please.
I can see we shall have no peace if you do not.
Father, do not worry about Lydia on her own in Brighton with the regiment.
Lydia will never rest till she exposes herself to ridicule in some public place. If things are worse, we can lock her up for the rest of her life.
Papa.
Oh, my love, you and Jane will be respected, despite having a couple of, or may I say, 3 very selfish sisters. As you'll go to the Lake Country with your aunt and Uncle Gardner to improve your mind, Lydia will go to Brighton to degrade herself.
Dear Lizzie, due to the press of Mr. Gardiner's business, our pleasure tour must be curtailed and it will not be possible to visit the Lake Country. We have made alternate plans.
To visit the finest country house and grounds in England.
I have made discreet inquiries and learned that the master of the house, whom I know you dislike, will be away. You must guess that I am thinking of the Darcy estate.
Pemberley.
Very finely proportioned.
Must have 100 rooms.
At least, but it is not pretentious. It seems a part of the landscape, quite splendid. Don't you agree, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Oh, would it not be something to be mistress of such a place?
Would the ladies and gentlemen like to see the house?
I understand your master is not at home?
Nay, sir, none of the family are here at present, but he always likes for people to see the house.
Lizzie, look at this.
Oh, that's bad, Georgie. Georgie Wickham, son of the late Master Stewart. I'm afraid he turned out very wild. Now that is my master, and very like him.
It is a handsome face, but Lizzie, you can tell us whether it is like him or not.
Does this young lady know Mr. Darcy?
A little.
And do you not think him a very handsome gentleman, ma'am?
Yes. Very handsome.
Is your master much at Pemberley in the course of the year?
No, sir. Not as much as I could wish.
If your master were to marry, you might see more of him.
Yes, sir. But I do not know who is good enough for him.
Indeed.
If I were to go through the world, I would not meet with a better man. He was always the sweetest tempered, most generous-hearted boy in the world.
Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy, we weren't expecting you. Mrs. Reynolds leaves to make tea.
I trust that your family is well.
Perfectly so. I thank you.
Miss Elizabeth, you would do me the honor of introducing me to your friends.
Certainly. My uncle and aunt, Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner of Cheapside.
Mr. Gardiner.
Mr. Darcy.
Mrs. Gardiner.
Mr. Darcy.
You have a fine trout stream running through your garden, Mr. Darcy.
Are you a keen fisherman?
Why, Mr. Darcy, though I am seldom able to indulge the taste, I am very fond of fishing.
Well, then you must take a few trout from my stream. I will lend you the tackle and point out all the best places.
How very kind, sir. That would be splendid. Mr.
And Mrs. Gardiner.
Move to look at the river.
I certainly admire the beauty of this place, Mr. Darcy. It is beautiful.
Thank you, Miss Bennet.
Mr. Darcy, I wish you to know I had been assured of your absence before I came here.
Yes. Business with my steward took me to Pemberley unexpectedly.
I received your letter, Mr. Darcy.
Did you, Miss Bennet?
I did, Mr. Darcy.
Ah, good. I'm glad you received my letter.
It seems, Mr. Darcy, that between us there is an embargo on every subject. Mr. Bingley!
I apologize for intruding. I don't know if Mr. Darcy mentioned I had accompanied him, but I felt I must pay my respects.
How is your sister, Mr. Bingley?
Your sister? Oh, my sister. She's well. Well, she's in London. It has been quite some time, Miss Elizabeth, since I've had the pleasure of seeing you. Not since the 26th of November when we were all dancing together at Netherfield.
I am pleased to find your memory so exact.
Are all your sisters at home? Are they all well?
They were all perfectly well when I left, though Lydia has gone to Brighton, where the regiment is now encamped.
And the rest of your sisters? Are they at home? Are they well?
Quite well, Mr. Bingley.
Good. It is a great pleasure to see you again and to hear that your family is well. Excuse me.
Miss Bennet, I would like to do what I can towards raising the embargo between us.
Pardon, sir, but there is an express for Miss Bennet sent over from the hotel in town. Urgent.
Oh, where is my uncle? I must leave you. I have not a moment to lose.
Good God, what does it matter? I will not detain you a moment, but let me go get Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner. You're not well enough.
No, I'm only distressed. This is from Jane. It confirms the very character you gave Wickham in your letter, and in a dreadful way. Mr. Wickham has run away with Lydia. She has no money, no connections, nothing that can tempt him to marry her. She is lost forever.
I'm shocked. Is it certain? Absolutely certain?
They left Brighton together on Sunday night and were traced almost to London.
I would to heaven that I could offer consolation for your distress.
We must go. Make my farewells to Mr. Darcy. Conceal the unhappy truth as long as possible. I must return to my family.
Lizzie, it is good to Lizzie, it is good to have you home.
I am sure it is, but I know not what your father is doing at home. Who is to go to London and fight Wickham and make him marry her?
Mamma, you know that the Gardiners have gone to London, where their connections make it far more likely that they will have success in rescuing Lydia than Papa.
At least I have the sympathy of my relation to console me. Read this, Lizzie. It's from Mr. Collins.
My dear sir, I find myself called upon by our relationship to condole with you at your present distress. The death of your daughter would have been a blessing in comparison. Let me advise you to throw off your unruly daughter from your affections forever, and let her reap the fruits of her own heinous offense.
Oh!
Oh, Papa, what news? What news? Have you heard from my uncle?
I have.
My dear brother-in-law, at last I am able to send you some tidings of my niece. They have been found together. I have seen them both.
Then they are married.
They are not married, nor did Mr. Wickham have any such intention. But he will marry her if you assure your daughter her share of the £5,000 provided to her and her sisters after your decease, and to allow her £100 a year during your life. I have agreed to these terms on your behalf. Mr. Wickham is being transferred to a regiment in the north, and he and Lydia will pay their respects to you on their way.
He will marry her.
Must they marry? He is such a man.
Yes. They must marry. There's nothing else to be done.
The terms, I suppose, must be complied with.
Complied with? I'm only ashamed of his asking of so little.
Wickham?
Your uncle, Gardner, depend upon it. Wickham possesses a great deal more. Here are 3 things that I want to know. How much money your uncle has given Wickham? How can he afford it? And how am I to pay him back?
Money? My uncle? What do you mean, sir?
I mean that no man in his senses would marry Lydia for 100 a year during my life and £1,000 when I'm gone. Even Wickham's gambling debts amount to more than that.
And a small son could not do this.
No, Wickham's a scoundrel, but he's not a fool. I can only imagine he'd marry Lydia for less than £10,000.
£10,000? How is such a sum to be repaid?
I do not know.
May we take my uncle's letter to read it to Mama?
Take whatever you like and get away.
Hi, dear Lydia. Oh, this is delightful news indeed. I must give the good news to Lady Lucas. Oh, how well it sounds.
Mrs. Wickham. The young bride arrives home.
Mr. Wickham follows behind his wife, accompanied by the gardeners.
Mr. Wickham?
Mr. Bennet.
Oh, you must all congratulate me. When I went away, I had no idea of being married when I came back, though I thought it would be very good fun if I was.
My dear Lydia, I do not at all like your going such a way off now. Must it be so?
Lord, yes. My sisters must come up and visit us. I dare say there will be balls, and I shall get husbands for you all.
I don't particularly like your way of getting husbands, but I thank you for my share of the favor.
Oh, Lizzie, don't go. I must give you an account of my wedding. Do you not want to hear how it went off?
I think the less said of the subject, the better.
But I must tell you. It was all to be so hush-hush, but I shall burst if I tell nobody at all. Uncle and Aunt Gardner were horrid unpleasant all the time. They talked and argued and signed papers. There was no end of it. It looked as if the wedding would never happen. And then Mr. Darcy came, and it was all settled.
Mr. Darcy?
Oh, yes. But gracious me, I quite forgot. That was to be a secret. I promised them so faithfully.
My dear aunt, can you tell me, what was Mr. Darcy doing at Lydia's wedding?
Lizzie, do you think we have the money to clear Mr. Wickham's debts, settle things with his regiment, and to provide enough over that to induce him to do the right thing by Lydia?
Mr. Darcy?
It was done by him alone.
But why?
Perhaps you can guess.
Oh, my dear Lydia, when shall we meet again?
Lord, I don't know.
Write to me often, my dear.
But married women have never time for writing. My sisters may write to me. They will now be stuck in this house with nothing else to do.
A day passes. Maybe two since Lydia left with her new husband, or maybe more. The flowers are blooming, or maybe we've gone backwards. For here we find ourselves back at the beginning.
My dear Mr. Bennet, have you heard? Netherfield Hall is to be occupied again! I just saw Lady Lucas to give her all the good news about Lydia, and she told me all about it.
Mr. Bingley, a single man of large fortune. What a fine thing for our girls.
Yes, Mr. Bingley is returned! You will wait on him, of course.
No, you promised me if I went to see him, he'd have to marry one of my daughters, but I'll not be sent on a fool's errand again. He knows where we live. Lizzie, this is another letter from Mr. Collins. May congratulate you on an important conquest.
From Mr. Collins? And what more can he have to say?
Your daughter, Elizabeth, it is presumed by many, will not long bear the name of Bennet.
Lizzie, are you not aware of whom you are to marry? But it comes out.
Oh, yes. I am quite diverted. Pray read on.
But let me warn you, we have reason to imagine that his aunt, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, does not look on the match with a friendly eye.
Mr. Darcy, you see, is your fiancé. Mr. Darcy, who has never looked at a woman but to see a fault, has probably never looked at you in his life. Are you not diverted?
Oh, yes. I am excessively diverted.
She has...
Mama, Mr. Bingley is coming here. Look, he is coming here to the house.
Oh, my dear Jane, hurry down. Mr. Bingley has come. He has come. Make haste, make haste.
Jane?
I feel perfectly easy. I know my own strength. It will be publicly seen that on both sides we meet only as common and indifferent acquaintance.
Yes, very indifferent.
My dear Lizzie, you cannot think me so weak as to be in danger now.
I think you are in very great danger of seeing him as much in love with you as ever.
I shall enjoy his conversation as an agreeable and sensible young man without having a wish beyond that. Lizzie, do not smile.
You are very cruel. You will not let me smile and yet are provoking me to it every moment.
Mr. Bingley enters.
It is a long time, Mr. Bingley, since you went away.
It has, Mrs. Bennet.
A great many changes in the neighborhood. Charlotte Lucas is married and settled, and one of my own daughters, Lydia. Well, I suppose you've heard of it.
I have. May I offer my congratulations?
Mama, what's the matter? What do you keep winking at me for? What am I to do?
Nothing, child, nothing. I did not wink at you. Come here, my child. I wish to speak with you. Lizzie, my love, I wish to speak with you as well.
Miss Bennet, perhaps you would do me the honor of walking in the park with me.
Yes, I would.
The others rush up to the window to spy on them.
Mama, someone else is coming. In a carriage. Oh, it is an old woman.
I do not know her. Do you, Lizzie?
I do. Good afternoon, Lady Catherine.
Lady Catherine de Bourgh!
I hope you are well, Miss Bennet. That lady, I suppose, is your mother.
She is.
And that, I suppose, is one of your sisters.
Yes, ma'am. She is my youngest girl but one. Would you take some refreshment, Lady Catherine?
No, I did not come here to eat. Miss Bennet, I will take a walk on your lawn if you will favor me with your company.
Go, my dear, but stay out of the way of Jane and Mr. Bingley.
I am sure you are aware, Miss Bennet, of the reason for my journey hither.
Indeed, you are mistaken, madam. I am not.
Miss Bennet, however insincere you may choose to be, you will not find me so. I am known for my frankness. I have heard that you will soon be engaged to my own nephew, Mr. Darcy. Though I know it must be a scandalous falsehood, I came to warn you against it.
If you believed it impossible, why take the trouble of coming?
To insist upon having such a report universally contradicted. Will you here and now declare this report untrue? Has my nephew made you an offer of marriage?
I do not pretend to possess equal frankness with your ladyship. You may ask questions which I shall choose not to answer.
Miss Bennet, I am the nearest relation he has in the world, and am entitled to know his concerns.
But you are not entitled to know mine.
Mr. Darcy is to be engaged to my daughter. Now, what have you to say?
If he is, then how could he possibly make an offer to me?
The engagement between them is of a peculiar kind. From their infancy, they have been intended for each other.
I have heard that. But what is that to me? I shall certainly not be kept from marrying your daughter by knowing that you wish him to marry your nephew.
Do not expect to be noticed by his family or friends. You will be slighted, censured, and despised by everyone connected with him. I will never mention your name.
That is a heavy misfortune.
Tell me once and for all, are you engaged to him?
I am not.
And will you promise me never to enter into such an engagement?
I will make no such promise.
I know all about your younger sister's infamous elopement. Is the son of a steward to be Mr. Darcy's brother?
Lady Catherine, you have insulted me by every possible method. I must beg you to depart.
I take no leave of you, Miss Bennet. I sent no compliments to your mother. You deserve no such courtesy. I am most seriously displeased.
Lady Catherine storms off.
Jane runs up to Elizabeth. "'Tis too much, by far too much. I do not deserve it. Oh, Lizzie, I am so happy. Oh, I must go instantly to mother. He has gone to father already. Oh, Lizzie, how shall I bear so much happiness?"
Where's your sister?
With my mother upstairs. She will be down in a moment, I dare say.
Oh, I am so happy. I always said it must be so. At last! I was sure Jane could not be so beautiful for nothing. Wickham and Lydia are nothing to this. Oh, you are the most wonderful child there ever was.
Jane, I congratulate you. I have no doubt that you are doing very well together.
I must petition you, my sister, for use of the library at Netherfield when you are there settled.
Yes.
Library? Oh, Jane, think of the balls you will be able to give. Do say you will give at least 3 a year.
Yes. Oh, Lizzie, if I could but see you as happy.
No,
There
no.
were such another man for you.
If I am very lucky, I may meet with another Mr. Collins in time.
There is another gentleman, Mamma. Who can it be? La, it looks just like that man that was with Bingley before, Mr. What's-his-name, that tall, proud man.
Mr. Darcy? Well, any friend of Mr. Bingley's will always be welcome here, but I must say, I hate the very sight of him.
Elizabeth opens the door.
Miss Elizabeth, may I speak with you? Alone?
Everyone
else
withdraws.
In
astonishment!
Mr. Darcy, I must thank you for your kindness to my poor sister.
I'm sorry you were informed of that.
Lydia's thoughtlessness betrayed to me that you had been concerned. Let me thank you in the name of all my family.
If you thank me, let it be for yourself alone. The wish of giving you happiness led me on. Miss Bennet, I come from speaking with my aunt. Her report gives me hope. Hope that... If your feelings are still what they were, please tell me so at once. My wishes and affections are unchanged, but one word from you will silence me on this subject forever.
That word I shall never speak. My emotions, I fear, will not allow me to speak fluently, but my sentiments have undergone so material a change that
Dearest, loveliest Elizabeth, I've never felt such happiness before. You cannot expect sense of a man in love, but I can assure you that for warmth of feeling, I have no equal. Will you marry me?
Yes.
Faye.
Kiss.
Good gracious Lord! Bless me. Only think, Mr. Darcy! Who would have thought it? Oh, my sweetest Lizzie, how rich and how great you will be. Oh, my dear Lizzie, pray, apologize for me having disliked him so much before. Such a charming man. 3 daughters married. 10,000 a year. Oh, Lord. What will become of me? I shall go distracted.